The morning they read my grandmother's will, I walked away with a decaying house nobody else desired. My father's words still echoing sharply. She gave you what you could handle. 4 months later, a foreman phoned me at 10 p.m. and spoke 7 words that shifted everything. "Ma'am, we've found something inside the wall." When I arrived, police lights already flashed across the driveway. The steel box they extracted from behind a false panel bore my initials etched into the lid. Its contents didn't merely prove my family mistaken, they exposed their crimes. But I'm jumping ahead. Before continuing, if this story truly resonates with you, please take a second to like and subscribe. And share your location and local time in the comments. I genuinely love to know where you're tuning in from. My name is Elise Harrow. I'm 28. This is the account of the cruelest act my family ever committed against me, and how my late grandmother ensured they would face consequences. Let me bring you back to last September, to a Sunday dinner. I sat at the table's distant end, nearest the kitchen, near enough to clear the plates. Every Sunday at 6, the Harrow family gathers for dinner. It isn't an invitation, it's a command. The house stands colonial, white columns, black shutters, pristine lawn, in Fairfield County, Connecticut. From the curb, it resembles a perfect family portrait. Inside, it feels like a courtroom where judgment was passed long before anyone took a seat. My father, Richard, claims the head. My mother, Vivian, sits to his right. My sister, Celeste, to his left. I remain at the far end, close to the kitchen, ready to clear plates. Tonight, Vivian radiates. Celeste has been promoted to senior account director. She places her wineglass down like a hard-won award. Richard nods deliberately, the slow affirmation of a man convinced he crafted success. "Boston office?" he inquires. "Regional lead," Celeste replies. She doesn't smile, she never needs to. The room smiles for her. I wait for a lull. "I helped a family secure permanent housing this week. Single mother, 2 children. They'd been in a shelter for—" "That's nice, sweetie," Vivian says, without glancing up. "Celeste, tell your father about the Boston account." The discussion flows onward. I slice my chicken. After dinner, I wash dishes alone. Celeste departs without farewell. My parents withdraw to the living room. No one invites me to linger. On the drive home, my phone vibrates, a voicemail. My grandmother Margaret's voice, warm and unrushed. "Ellie, I baked your lemon cake today. Come take it before your mother claims it." She calls weekly. She recalls my favorite recipe. She inquires about my cases, my clients, my difficult days. Once, on the porch of her old Ridgefield home, the house she grew up in, now rarely visited, she gazed at the walls as if they whispered secrets only she understood. "There are things I've hidden in this house, Elise," she said. "When the time comes, you'll understand." I assumed she meant memories. She spoke those words 3 months before her death. Now I realize she meant something far more concrete. The call arrives at 2:07 a.m. on a Tuesday. A nurse from St. Vincent's, tone measured and practiced. "Miss Harrow, I'm calling regarding your grandmother, Margaret Harrow. She passed peacefully in her sleep about an hour ago. I'm so sorry." I don't recall ending the call. I remember only my shoes, slipped on the wrong feet, unnoticed until I reached the highway. 40 minutes later, I enter the lot. 2 vehicles wait, my father's black Audi and an unfamiliar silver sedan. I expect my family at her bedside. Instead, they stand in the hallway. Richard, Vivian, and a stranger in a gray suit, clustered tightly near the vending machines. The man clutches a leather folder. My father nods. Celeste leans against the wall a few steps away, scrolling her phone. Her eyes remain dry. No one sees me pass. I enter the room alone. Grandma Margaret rests motionless, hands folded. The monitor is silent. The space holds a stillness that feels attentive, as though she has just spoken and awaits a reply. On her wrist gleams the thin, tarnished silver bracelet she wore daily for 40 years. I cradle it gently in my palm. Back in the hallway, Richard buttons his coat. "We need to discuss the estate, soon." No touch, no "are you all right?" Vivian smooths her scarf. "Your grandmother was old, Elise. It was her time. Let's focus on what's important now." The gray-suited man avoids my gaze. I ask the nurse about the bracelet. She nods permission. Vivian glances over. It's just costume jewelry, Elise. Keep it if you like. I slip it into my coat pocket, pressing my hand against its faint warmth the entire drive home, like she had just removed it. Later, I would discover the man was Gordon Blake, a lawyer my grandmother never retained, who arrived at the hospital at 3 a.m. before the family received any notification. But that night, I simply hold the bracelet and drive. The funeral takes place in a modest stone church in Weston. Over 80 people attend. Margaret Harrow was the sort who remembered your children's names and your dog's birthday. People cherished her effortlessly. Richard delivers the eulogy. Navy suit, steady voice, open hands. My father-in-law was a pillar of this family. She valued loyalty. She valued legacy. He pauses dramatically. We will honor her by remaining united. From the second row, I tally the falsehoods. Richard visited her twice in the final 2 years, each visit under 1 hour. Afterwards, mourners mingle in the courtyard. I linger at the edge, clutching untouched coffee. Most drift toward Vivian near the entrance, where she receives sympathies like a seasoned ambassador. Then a gentle hand grazes my elbow. Dorothy Callahan, 81, my grandmother's dearest friend for more than 50 years. She draws me aside near the hedge and murmurs, Your grandmother spoke of you constantly, Elise, every week. Her eyes are rimmed red, yet clear. She was concerned. She said she had taken precautions. Precautions against what? Dorothy parts her lips, then seals them. Vivian approaches, arms wide, smile broad. Dorothy, thank you so much for coming. The embrace endures precisely long enough for a photograph. We're all grieving together. Dorothy withdraws. She offers me one final glance, the silent promise, not here, not now, but soon. That evening, Celeste shares an Instagram post from the service, herself beside the casket flowers, head tilted, gaze tender. Caption, Rest in peace, Grandma. We were blessed to be your family. She doesn't tag me. She never does. I sit in my apartment, staring at the bracelet on my nightstand. Precautions. What measures does a woman take when she fears her own family? 3 weeks after the funeral, we gather in the office of Gordon Blake, attorney at law, a name unknown to me until my grandmother's death. He now apparently controls the keys to everything she left. The office feels sterile, beige walls, a conference table far too long for 5 people. Richard sits at one end, legs crossed, hands folded. Vivian beside him, spine rigid. Celeste opposite me, gaze fixed on her phone. Blake opens a leather folder and reads without lifting his eyes. To Richard and Vivian Harrow, management of the family trust, valued at approximately $1.8 million, including oversight of all liquid assets and investment accounts. To Celeste Harrow, the primary residence in Western Connecticut, together with its associated investment portfolio. To Elise Harrow, the property at 14 Birch Hollow Road, Ridgefield, Connecticut. I wait. Nothing follows. 14 Birch Hollow is my grandmother's childhood home, a place abandoned for more than a decade. Roof leaking, walls fracturing, electrical system condemned by the county 2 years earlier. Everyone in the room knows this. Richard turns to me, expression a rehearsed mask of calm. Your grandmother understood your limitations, Elise. She gave you what you could manage. Vivian clasps her hands. At least you have a roof, not everyone does. Celeste never looks up from her screen. I fix my eyes on Blake. My grandmother told me she would take care of me. She said it to my face. This is not what she intended. Richard leans forward. Are you calling your dead grandmother a liar? The room freezes. Blake closes the folder. I stand, collect my coat, and walk out without glancing at any of them. In the parking garage, I sit in my car for 11 minutes before I can turn the ignition. My hands tremble. I press them hard against the steering wheel until the shaking subsides. Then I notice the address again, 14 Birch Hollow Road, Ridgefield, Connecticut. The same house, the same porch, The same walls my grandmother once studied and said, "There are things I've hidden in this house, Elise." I turn the key and drive. The house at 14 Birch Hollow Road appears to have surrendered halfway through its battle with time. I park on the gravel shoulder and stare for a full minute. Victorian frame, wrap-around porch drooping at the left corner. 3 front windows cracked, gutters dangling like loose teeth. Weeds rise to my waist in the yard. Across the street, a neighbor parts a curtain, watches, then lets it fall. I push open the front door. It groans but yields. Inside, dust, mildew, hush. Floors spongy in spots from years of roof leaks. Staircase railing missing half its spindles. A bird has nested in the ceiling somewhere. In the kitchen, behind a veil of grime on the wall, hangs a small, faded framed photograph. A young woman cradling a baby stands before this very house. The yard is tidy, the porch freshly white, the woman smiling. I turn it over. In aged, bled ink, "For my Elise, the house remembers." Grandma wrote that. I set the photo on the counter and called the one renovator my coworker at the nonprofit swore by, Frank Delaney. He answers on the 3rd ring. He arrives that same afternoon, walks the house in silence, tests floors with his boot, traces walls with his palm. On the porch, he removes his cap. 60 to 70,000 minimum. You have that kind of money? I have $23,000 in savings and an untouched credit line. It isn't enough. It is everything I possess. I'll make it work, I tell him. Frank studies me, then nods once. I'll cut corners where I can. You're good for it. His crew begins the following Monday. They strip wallpaper, rip up flooring, start demolishing ruined walls. On the 2nd day, Frank calls me to the living room. He stands before the far wall, flashlight aimed at the exposed framing. "This wall's strange," he says. "Double layered. Someone built a false wall here deliberately." I stare at the shadowed gap between the 2 layers. Dark, hollow, purposeful. "Keep going," I say. Frank glances at me, then at the wall. "Lady, someone didn't want this touched, but it's your house." He lifts the sledgehammer. Richard calls the next evening. I let it ring twice before answering. "Elise," he says, voice measured, practiced. "That house is a money pit. You know it. I'll buy it from you. 15,000 cash. At least you'll walk away with something." $15,000 for the house my grandmother grew up in? The house she told me to remember. "No," I say. Silence. Then, "You're making a mistake." I hang up. The next morning, a text from Vivian, 3 paragraphs. The first opens, "You're tearing this family apart, Elise." The second, "Your grandmother would be ashamed of your behavior." The third, "All we did was follow her wishes. Hand over whatever you found and we can move past this as a family." She ends with a crying face emoji. I read it once. I do not reply. 2 days later, Celeste calls. First time in months. "Just take the money and move on. Why are you making this weird?" "Celeste, you received the house in Weston. You received the investments. Grandma wouldn't have left me a ruin. You know that." "Because I earned it. I was there for Grandma." Celeste visited 3 times in the final year. I know because Grandma kept a guest book by the door. Then something uglier occurs. My credit union calls. A man claiming to be my father inquired about the status and details of my personal loan. "We disclosed nothing," the loan officer assures me, "but we needed to verify. Did you authorize this inquiry?" I did not. They're not merely waiting for me to fail, they're trying to engineer it. That night, I sit on the porch of 14 Birch Hollow. The boards creak beneath me. Inside, Frank's crew has stacked tools neatly against the exposed framing. I call Frank. "Speed it up. Tear out every old wall. All of them." He pauses. "You expecting to find something?" "My grandmother told me the house remembers. I want to know what it remembers." Frank exhales slowly. "All right, we start the living room false wall tomorrow." I hang up and gaze into the dark yard. Wind slips through the broken windows behind me, and the house groans as though it has been holding its breath for years. Thursday, 9:47 p.m. I'm cross-legged on my apartment floor sorting renovation receipts when my phone glows. Frank Delaney. He never calls this late. Ma'am. His voice is low, tight, as if he's shielding the microphone. We found something behind the false wall in the living room. I can't explain it over the phone. What is it? I called the police, ma'am. They said don't touch anything. A beat. And don't tell your parents. Don't tell your sister. Just come. I don't ask why. His tone tells me questions would waste time. The drive from my apartment to Ridgefield normally takes 34 minutes. Tonight, in the rain, it took 26. My wipers slap a rhythm I can't match. My hands lock at 10 and 2 on the wheel and refuse to loosen. I think about what might lie behind that wall. Money, drugs, something illicit, something concealed forever. My mind races to every grim possibility and settles on none. The house emerges through the rain. 2 police cruisers sit out front, their lights sweeping blue and red across the slick trees. Frank waits on the porch, cap clutched in his hands, face ashen beneath the porch light. Inside, he says. I follow him through the front door. 2 officers occupy the living room. One photographs the scene methodically. The other stands back, arms crossed, observing. The false wall gapes open now, framing exposed, plaster dust scattered across the floor. And there, resting in the hollow between the 2 wall layers, sits a steel box, medium-sized, perhaps 2 feet by 1, coated in decades of dust. On the lid, etched in careful, even strokes, are 2 letters, E-H, my initials. I kneel. My fingers hover above the engraving. The dust lies undisturbed except where Frank's flashlight has faintly traced its edges. My grandmother placed this here, behind a false wall, inside the house she left solely to me, engraved with my initials, secured with a combination lock I haven't yet attempted. And she did it long before her death. How long has this waited? The officer with the camera steps aside. It's your property, ma'am. You may open it. We only need to document the contents. I kneel before the box. The combination lock requires 4 digits. I stare at it and recall every number my grandmother ever made me memorize. Her phone number, her address, her recipe measurements. Then I try the simplest, my birthday, March 19th. The lock clicks open. The lid is heavy. I lift it with both hands. Inside, the box is divided into 3 precise compartments, each lined with cloth, the kind of meticulous care reserved for things that truly matter. The first compartment contains a thick envelope sealed with wax. I break it open. Inside lies a handwritten document, 4 pages on ruled paper. At the top of the first page, in my grandmother's unmistakable hand, Last Will and Testament of Margaret Ann Whitfield Harrow, dated 18 months before the will Gordon Blake read in his office. 2 witness signatures below, a notary stamp. This is the real one, the original. The second compartment holds a letter, also 4 handwritten pages. The opening line reads, My dearest Elise, if you are reading this, then they did exactly what I feared they would do. My vision blurs. I press the heel of my hand to my eye and continue. She writes of Richard, of the trust, of the pressure, of the fear. They have been taking from me for 2 years. I could not stop them alone, so I prepared. The third compartment contains a smaller envelope stamped private in red ink. I reach for it. Ma'am, the officer says, stepping forward, that one, we recommend a lawyer review it first. Some contents may be evidentiary. I withdraw my hand. I glance at the 2 officers, then at Frank, who grips the door frame in the entry. What's in there? Frank asks. I lift the first document. My hands tremble, but my voice holds steady. Her real will, the one they tried to erase. The officer takes a photograph. I read the terms. The true will bequeaths the entire trust, all of it, and the Western house to me. Celeste receives this Ridgefield house and $50,000. Richard and Vivian each receive $1.
At the bottom, in Grandma's own hand, "So they know I did not forget them. I simply did not forgive." The room falls silent. Rain taps the window. Frank exhales a breath he has held since I arrived. I fold the letter carefully and press it to my chest. The paper carries a faint trace of lavender, the scent that once lived in every room she touched. "They will tell you I didn't love you enough to give you more," she wrote. "The truth is, I loved you too much to let them take everything." I remain on that floor for a long time. The next morning, a detective from the Ridgefield Police Department telephones, Sergeant Ortiz. His tone is flat, professional, measured. "Ms. Harrow, we opened the third envelope with a forensic technician present. I need you to come in." I arrive at the station by 10. Ortiz walks me through the findings, bank statements, dozens of them, printed, highlighted, annotated in my grandmother's handwriting. They document transfers from her trust account to a personal account under Richard Blake's name, spanning 23 months. The total? Approximately $340,000. Each transfer includes an authorization form bearing what appears to be my grandmother's signature. Except, Ortiz says, sliding one page toward me, "Your grandmother wrote notes on the margins." He points to small, steady pencil marks. "I did not sign this. This is not my handwriting." She had requested duplicate statements mailed to a private P.O. box. She had tracked every fraudulent transfer. She had assembled the file herself. There is also this. Ortiz places another document on the table. A request to change the trustee and legal representative of her estate, 6 months before her death. The signature reads Margaret's name, but the handwriting is clearly wrong. Even I can see it. "We've forwarded everything to the district attorney's office," he says. "This is no longer a civil matter, ma'am." I sit in the parking lot afterwards and call the one person my coworker recommended for a case like this, Eleanor Voss, estate litigation attorney, a woman said to have never lost a probate fraud case in 12 years. She answers on the first ring. I speak for 9 minutes without pause. She listens in silence. When I finish, she says, "Your grandmother didn't just leave you a house, she left you a case. Come to my office tomorrow, bring everything." I drive home with the windows down. Though the air is cold, it feels different. Not lighter, but clearer. Before I left the station, the police mentioned one final detail. The third envelope also held what Ortiz termed additional documents related to family history. Those have been referred to a federal agency for review. I asked which agency. "The FBI," he said. I didn't press for more. I wasn't sure I was ready for the answer. Word spreads quickly in a small town. Someone noticed the police cruisers at 14 Birch Hollow. Someone told someone who told Richard. He calls the next evening. No greeting, no preamble. "Whatever you think you found in that house, it means nothing." His voice is tight, controlled, but beneath it lies something new. Fear. "I have the best lawyers in this county. You'll lose everything, including that shack." I say nothing. He hangs up. An hour later, Vivian calls. She is sobbing. The performance is flawless. Cracked voice, shuddering breaths, perfectly timed pauses. "Elise, you're destroying this family. Grandma would be heartbroken. Whatever you think you have, just give it back. We can fix this. We're your parents." I let her finish. Then I say, "Good night, Mom," and end the call. Celeste texts at midnight. 4 words. "You're delusional. Dad's lawyer will bury you." 2 days later, it arrives. Gordon Blake enters Eleanor Voss's office carrying a settlement proposal. His hands remain steady, but his eyes do not. "My client is offering a generous resolution," he says.
Elise retains the Ridgefield property. She receives an additional $50,000. In exchange, she signs a non-disclosure agreement and surrenders all materials recovered from the house. Eleanor doesn't flinch. My client does not negotiate when forged documents are involved. Blake rises, buttons his jacket. At the door he pauses and speaks, not to me, but to Eleanor. "Between us, tell her to be careful. Richard Harrow knows people in this county." The door closes behind him. I turn to Eleanor. What did he mean, knows people? She sets down her pen, folds her hands. Her face remains calm, but something in her eyes turns to steel. It means we may not get an impartial trial here. I think of my grandmother, alone in her house, penciling notes in the margins of bank statements no one was meant to see. She knew. She knew the system might fail to shield her, yet she's still prepared. Then we go somewhere that will be fair, I say. Leonard nods once, as though she had been waiting for exactly those words. She files the initial challenge in Fairfield County Probate Court. The motion is precise. Void the Blake will, recognize the handwritten original, investigate the trust transfers. 2 weeks later, the ruling arrives. Motion denied. Judge Harold Kern writes, insufficient evidence to overturn a properly filed and executed will. Leonard calls me from her car. I hear her breathing, slow, deliberate, the rhythm of someone choosing each word with care. The judge didn't review the forensic analysis. He didn't schedule a hearing. He issued a summary denial in 48 hours. She pauses. That doesn't happen. I ask the question whose answer I already know. Why? Judge Kern and your father are both members of the Fairfield Country Club. I checked the sign-in logs. They've dined together 3 times in the past month. The floor seems to tilt, not from shock, but from the quiet confirmation that this is precisely what my grandmother feared. They did exactly what I feared they would do. The walls are closing. The bank refuses to extend my credit. The renovation stands half-finished, bills mounting. Frank has agreed to defer payment, but I hear the strain in his voice when he says, "Take your time." He means it. Time, though, costs money neither of us has. That night, I sit on the floor of the Ridgefield house, half-gutted walls, exposed wiring, the scent of fresh sawdust layered over something older and deeper. I unfold Grandma's letter and reread the line I return to again and again. Don't let them make you small, Elise. The truth is heavy, but it will hold you up when nothing else can. I sit there and wonder, did she know it would be this difficult? Did she know the system itself would resist? Have you ever held something undeniably true in your hands and watched every door slam shut? If you have, I'd love to hear how you kept moving forward. Share in the comments. Leonard calls the next morning. We're going federal. I'm making the call. Federal, I repeat. The word feels vast. Bank fraud is a federal crime. Elder financial abuse involving interstate managed trusts falls under federal jurisdiction, and if the local bench is compromised, we have grounds to escalate. Her voice is unyielding. This isn't revenge, Elise. This is procedure. I close my eyes. I picture Grandma's handwriting, steady, certain, even at the end. Make the call, I say. Leonard contacts the FBI field office in New Haven. She submits the case in writing. Forged legal documents, fraudulent trust transfers totaling $340,000, a compromised local judge, and evidence painstakingly gathered by the victim herself before her death. 1 week later, a number I don't recognize rings. Miss Harrow, my name is Marcus Whitfield. I'm a retired special agent with the FBI. I've been asked to consult on your case because of its complexity. His voice is low, unhurried, precise, the kind that commands attention without effort. We meet at a cafe in Westport. He is already seated when I arrive, 71, silver-haired, brown tweed jacket over a pressed shirt. Reading glasses rest on the table beside untouched coffee. His eyes are sharp, yet carry a warmth earned over decades. He doesn't begin with the case. He begins with her. Tell me about your grandmother. I wasn't expecting that. What do you want to know? Whatever you want to tell me. So I talk. I tell him about the lemon cake, the Sunday phone calls, the way she can make any room feel safe simply by being in it, the Ridgefield porch where she'd sit with her coffee, saying nothing, yet saying everything. Marcus listens. No notes, no interruptions. Once, just once, he looks away and I glimpse something cross his face. Not professional detachment, but something closer to grief. She was remarkable, he says quietly. He tells me the FBI is opening a federal investigation. Richard and Vivian will be subpoenaed. The forged legal documents and bank records will undergo federal forensic analysis. This will go to court, and it won't be Judge Kern's court. We rise to leave. He reaches out and takes my hand in both of his. He holds it a moment longer than a stranger should. His palms are warm. His grip is gentle. He looks at me with an expression I cannot quite name. "You have her eyes," he says. I smile, puzzled. "People say I look like my mother." "No," Marcus replies. "You look like Margaret." He releases my hand and walks to his car. I stand on the sidewalk watching him drive away. Something tugs at the edge of my mind. A name I should know. Whitfield. Marcus Whitfield. My grandmother's maiden name before she married was Whitfield. I stand there long after his car vanishes. Richard doesn't wait for the subpoena. He goes on the offensive. A story appears in the Fairfield County Register. It looks like journalism, but carries the unmistakable scent of a press release. Headline: Local family in turmoil as Lois daughter contests mother's estate. Richard sounds reasonable, caring. That's what makes it so dangerous. Vivian takes it to social media, a public Facebook post, a family photo from Christmas 2 years earlier, all 4 of us in matching sweaters, Grandma Margaret at the center. Caption: Our family is being torn apart by greed and false accusations. All I ever wanted was to keep us together. Please pray for us. 47 shares, over 100 sympathetic comments. I am not tagged. I am not named. Everyone knows anyway. At work, my supervisor pulls me aside. "Elise, I support you, but a few donors have asked questions. Try to keep this private." She means well. There is no private. Richard made sure of that. Then the real blow lands. Celeste calls, voice flat. "Dad says if you don't drop this by Friday, he'll petition to have you declared mentally unfit." I think she's bluffing. She isn't. 3 days later, Leonard forwards the filing, a petition for mental competency evaluation, submitted to Fairfield Probate Court. The petitioner is not Richard, it's Vivian. Her statement reads, "My daughter has a documented history of anxiety and depression. She has made erratic decisions following her grandmother's death. I am concerned for her safety and her ability to handle legal and financial affairs. I did attend therapy 2 years ago for grief, for the burden of being invisible in my own family. Vivian knew because I confided in her, hoping she would understand. She kept the record, not to support me, but to weaponize it." Eleanor calls within the hour. "They're attempting to strip your legal capacity. If they succeed, you can't sue, you can't testify. You become a ward, not a plaintiff." Her voice is taut. "We need to act quickly." I stare at Vivian's signature on the petition. Neat, centered, no tremor in the strokes. My own mother filed documents declaring me insane to safeguard the money she stole. I telephoned Dr. Patterson that same afternoon. She has been my therapist, on and off, for 2 years, the person who helped me identify the patterns I grew up inside: control, dismissal, conditional love. She listens to the entire story without interruption. Then she says, "I'll have the evaluation letter on your attorney's desk by morning." The letter spans 3 pages, thorough, unequivocal. Elise Haro exhibits full cognitive and emotional competence. There is no clinical foundation for a competency challenge. Her decision-making is consistent, informed, and autonomous. Eleanor files the rebuttal within 48 hours, attaching Dr. Patterson's evaluation along with a motion to dismiss Vivian's petition. Simultaneously, she submits a request to transfer jurisdiction to the United States District Court for the District of Connecticut, federal level. The FBI submits a supporting brief endorsing the transfer. The Fairfield Probate Court offers no resistance. Judge Kern recuses himself before any formal motion can compel him. The case ascends. That evening, I do something I have never done before. I call Richard directly, not to plead, not to argue, but to inform. "Dad," my voice remains level, quiet. "I know what you and Mom did. I have the original will, I have the bank records, I have the forged signatures. The FBI is involved now. I pause, not for effect, but to breathe. You can stop this, or it goes public. Your choice. Silence. 10 seconds. 15. You're going to regret this, Elise. You have no idea what you're starting. I didn't start it. Grandma did. She knew you'd come for her money. She simply made sure I'd have the proof. I hang up. My hands tremble, but not in the old way. This is not fear. This is the tremor of something finally locking into alignment. Eleanor calls later that night with one final piece. FBI forensics have completed their analysis of Blake's will. The handwriting expert's conclusion, 99.7% probability that the signature on Blake's document was not written by Margaret Whitfield Horrow. 99.7, not a trace of doubt, not a fragment of uncertainty. Grandma signed her real will. Someone else signed the forgery, and I possess both. Dorothy Callahan telephones on a Sunday morning. She has read the article in the Register. She has seen Vivian's Facebook post, and she is finished staying silent. Come to my house, Elise. There are things I should have told you at the funeral. Her living room carries the scent of bergamot and aged paper. She sits opposite me in a wing-back chair, hands resting on a quilted blanket draped across her lap. On the side table stands a framed photograph of her and Grandma, two young women in their mid-20s, laughing on a dock somewhere sunlit. Your grandmother had a life before Richard, before your mother's father, before Harold. There was someone else. She speaks of a young man named Marcus. They met in the early 1970s, when Margaret was barely 20. She loved him in a way that clashed with the family's expectations. They forced her to end it. Dorothy pauses. The reasons belonged to that era. I won't prettify them. What happened to him? He vanished, moved away. Margaret married Harold the following year. She never spoke of Marcus again, not for decades. Dorothy glances at the photograph. Then one day, perhaps 15 years ago, she told me she had found him, that they had reconnected. She said, "He never stopped looking for me, Dorothy, and I never stopped wishing he hadn't." Dorothy reaches behind her chair and draws out a small wooden box. Margaret gave this to me a year before she died. She said, "Give it to Elise if something happens. Only Elise." Inside lies a black and white photograph. A young woman and a young man stand arm in arm before a building I do not recognize. She wears a white dress. He wears a dark suit. On the reverse, in faded ink, M&M 1974, Margaret and Marcus. I hold the photograph closer. The man is in his mid-20s, sharp cheekbones, dark, steady eyes. I have seen those eyes before, last week across a cafe table in Westport. "Dorothy," I say slowly, "my grandmother's maiden name was Whitfield." Dorothy nods. She says nothing more. She does not need to. I stare at the photograph until the faces soften and blur. "You have her eyes," Marcus said to me. Not a compliment, a recognition. "She planned everything, dear," Dorothy says from her chair. "She was the smartest woman I ever knew." She pauses, and her voice lowers, weighted with sorrow, and the most heartbroken. I drive home with the photograph on the passenger seat. The fragments are shifting in my mind, forming a shape I am not yet prepared to name aloud. That night, I sit at my kitchen table with 3 items before me: the photograph from Dorothy, the silver bracelet from Grandma, and the steel box I retrieved from Ridgefield. The bracelet first. I turn it under the lamp. I have worn it nearly every day since the hospital, yet I have never inspected it closely. The exterior is plain, smooth, tarnished, unremarkable. Vivian was right about one detail. It resembles costume jewelry. But when I tilt it under the light, I see etched inside the clasp in letters so tiny they demand magnification, a sequence of numbers. September 17th, 1974. The same year as the photograph. M&M 1974. A date, a code, concealed in plain view for 40 years. I carry the steel box to the table. When the police processed it, they documented the 3 compartments, but I recalled a second lock beneath the main section, a smaller combination panel recessed into the base. The officers tested a few sequences and moved on. They left it for me. I enter the numbers 09171974. The base panel releases with a faint click. Inside the hidden compartment rests a single document, folded in thirds, shielded by a plastic sleeve. I withdraw it carefully. A birth certificate, yellowed with age, State of Connecticut. Name, Margaret Ann Whitfield. Date of birth, June 3, 1952. Mother, Ruth Ellen Whitfield. Father, Marcus James Whitfield. Marcus is not her former lover. Marcus is her father. I set the birth certificate aside and lift the final item from the compartment, a folded letter, Grandma's handwriting once more. This one is briefer, 2 paragraphs. Elise, Marcus Whitfield is my father. He was forced to surrender me when I was 3. The court removed me from him under circumstances that were unjust and unforgivable. I found him when I was 40. We kept the secret to protect you, because Richard would wield it against us. When you meet him, you will know he is family, real family, the kind that doesn't take, the kind that waits. I read it twice, then 3 times. I hold the paper to the light, as though the words might shift into something simpler to grasp. Marcus Whitfield, the retired FBI agent aiding my case, is my great-grandfather, my grandmother's father, the man who lost his daughter to the courts 70 years ago and spent his life forging himself into someone no system could ever dismiss again. And my grandmother concealed the truth inside a bracelet I have worn every day without realizing its secret. I lift my phone and dial Marcus. He answers on the first ring, as if he has been waiting. I found the hidden compartment, I say. I know who you are. The line falls quiet. Not the hush of astonishment, but the stillness of a man who has carried a weight for decades and has finally been told he may release it. I was waiting for you to discover it, Marcus replies. That was Margaret's plan, not mine. We meet at the Ridgefield house the next morning. He arrives first. I find him on the porch, gazing across the yard, hands tucked into the pockets of his tweed jacket. For a moment, I see him as Grandma must have seen him, patient, steadfast, still present after everything. We sit at the kitchen table. He tells me the story. In 1955, when Margaret was 3, her mother, Marcus's wife, Ruth, died of pneumonia. Marcus was 23, working part-time at a hardware store with no savings. Ruth's family petitioned for custody. The court granted it. Margaret was removed. Marcus was promised visitation. Then the visit ceased. Then the address changed. Then she vanished. I searched for 15 years, he says. I joined the Bureau because I needed access to records most people could never reach. I told myself it was for justice. It was for her. He located Margaret in 1992. She was 40. They met on a bench in a Hartford park and sat for 3 hours, speaking almost nothing. She held my hand, he says. That was enough. They kept the reunion hidden. Richard had married Vivian the year before Marcus found her. Margaret warned that he was already inquiring about her finances. If he learns about you, she told Marcus, he'll exploit it. He'll claim I'm unstable for reconnecting with the father I was taken from. He'll twist it. Marcus looks at me. His eyes glisten, yet his voice remains firm. 3 years ago, when Margaret called and said he would steal everything after her death, I made her a promise. I couldn't save my daughter from that family, but I would save my granddaughter. I say nothing. I don't need to. I reach across the table and take his hand. He shares one final detail. Margaret had sent him copies of the trust documents and bank records before she died, a safeguard in case the box was lost. Copies from a deceased sender carry evidentiary limits. The originals, recovered by the rightful heir from her own property, are unassailable. That was the design, not Marcus's, not Eleanor's, Margaret's. She could not confront them in life, so she constructed a case from beyond the grave and entrusted the one person they always underestimated to uncover it: me. I remain in that kitchen long after Marcus departs. The bracelet rests on my wrist. The birth certificate lies on the table. Outside, the yard is still. For the first time in 28 years, I understand what family is meant to feel like. It does not demand, it does not perform, it does not tally debts. It waits. Eleanor's office, Wednesday afternoon. 3 chairs drawn around her desk. Eleanor, Marcus, and me. A whiteboard behind her marked with dates, names, and red arrows linking them. Here's our position. Federal Court, District of Connecticut. No longer a will contest, a criminal referral paired with a civil probate challenge. She taps the board. Charges under consideration: forgery of legal documents, bank fraud under 18 U.S.C. Section 1344, elder financial abuse, conspiracy. Marcus leans in. The FBI has finished forensic review. Handwriting analysis confirms the Blake will is forged. The trust transfer authorizations, 6 separate documents bearing Margaret's name, none written by her. Eleanor nods. We also have Margaret's video deposition. I turn. Video? Marcus opens a folder. Your grandmother recorded a sworn statement 8 months before she passed, at Dorothy Callahan's home, with Dorothy and a notary present. She anticipated that if the box surfaced, they would claim she was confused or coerced. He slides a USB drive across the desk. This is Margaret Harrow, of sound mind, stating unequivocally that any will presented by Gordon Blake is fraudulent. I press my fingers to my temples. She anticipated everything. Richard knows the hearing date, Eleanor continues. He's been calling his network, lawyers, the old judge, club members. But this is federal now. Kern has no sway. Richard's influence stops at the county line. That evening, Vivian calls. No tears this time. Cold. If you proceed, you will have no family left. Is that what you want? I hold the phone and glance at the silver bracelet on my wrist, at the photograph of Marcus and Margaret on my kitchen counter, at the letter that begins, "My dearest Elise." I haven't had a family for a long time, Mom. I just didn't know it yet. She ends the call first. I sit in the Ridgefield house that night. The renovation stands half complete. New floorboards in the hallway, fresh paint in the kitchen. The living room wall remains open where the box was discovered. I asked Frank to leave it that way. A reminder. Tomorrow, I step into a federal courtroom. I will carry my grandmother's handwriting in my bag, her bracelet on my wrist, and her father at my side. Tomorrow, they will see me, not the version they invented, the real one. The morning of the hearing, I wake at 5 and discover an email sent at 3:47 a.m. from Richard. Not to me alone, to every family address he possesses. Aunts, uncles, cousins, 26 recipients. It breaks my heart to write this. Elise is using fabricated documents and a stranger's influence to extort this family. She has a history of mental health struggles and has been manipulated by outside parties seeking access to Mother's estate. We ask for your prayers and understanding as we fight to protect Margaret's true wishes. By 7, my phone shows 4 missed calls. Aunt Karen, Uncle Dale, a cousin I haven't spoken to since Thanksgiving 2019. No messages, but I know the questions they want answered. I silence the phone and drive. The federal courthouse in New Haven is limestone and glass, solemn, unmoved by personal turmoil. I park 3 blocks away and walk. At the entrance, I see them. Richard in a charcoal suit, posture erect, nodding to a reporter from the register. He smiles for a photograph, controlled, respectable. We're confident the truth will emerge today, he says into a small recorder. Vivian stands 5 feet behind, clutching a tissue, speaking to a woman I recognize from their church. I just want my family back together, she says loud enough for passers-by to hear. And then there's Celeste.
She is not beside them. She stands near the building's east wall, alone, arms crossed, staring at the ground.
No phone in her hand, no rehearsed expression on her face. When she looks up and sees me, something crosses her features, something I have never witnessed from her before. Not hostility, not indifference. It might be fear, or it might be the first truly honest emotion she has felt in months. I do not pause. I walk past all three of them and through the glass doors. Eleanor waits in the lobby, briefcase in hand. Marcus stands beside her, tweed jacket, silver hair, steady as granite. I take my place between them, Eleanor on my right, Marcus on my left. The courtroom is half filled, 15 or so family members scattered across the gallery, 2 reporters, a court clerk, 2 U.S. Marshals near the door. Richard's legal team, 2 attorneys from a Hartford firm, settles at the opposing table. Richard takes his seat. He glances at Marcus, does not recognize him, looks away. The door behind the bench opens. All rise. The Honorable Judge Patricia Morrow presides. She is petite, silver-haired, and moves with the precise economy of someone who wastes neither words nor time. Counsel, proceed. Eleanor rises. She does not hurry. She holds a remote in one hand, a folder in the other. A projector hums to life behind her. Your Honor, this case begins with a death and a deception. The timeline appears on screen. 2 columns. Left, the original handwritten will, dated March 14 of the previous year, notarized, witnessed by 2 individuals. Right, the Gordon Blake will, dated 11 months later, filed with Fairfield Probate Court 3 days after Margaret Harrow's death. The will read by Mr. Blake was not authored by Margaret Harrow. Eleanor advances the slide. The FBI-certified forensic handwriting report fills the screen. 99.7% probability the signature on the Blake will does not belong to the deceased. Murmurs ripple through the gallery. Aunt Karen leans forward. Uncle Dale removes his glasses, replaces them. Eleanor clicks again. Bank records appear. 23 months of transfers highlighted, annotated. $340,000 moved from Margaret Harrow's trust into a personal account controlled by Richard Harrow, each transaction authorized by a forged signature. Richard's lead attorney stands. Objection. The provenance of these documents was established by law enforcement recovery and federal forensic analysis, Eleanor states without turning. I have the chain of custody report here. Judge Morrow glances at the defense table. Overruled. Continue. Eleanor opens the folder. She holds up a photocopy and reads aloud. I am writing this with full mental capacity. My son-in-law, Richard Harrow, and my daughter, Vivian, have been systematically stealing from my trust for 2 years. I fear that if I confront them, I will be silenced. The courtroom falls utterly still. A reporter's fingers freeze above the keyboard. 2 family members in the second row exchange a glance that can only be described as horror. Richard sits rigid, jaw locked. Vivian's hand rises to her throat, a reflex, not theater. At the rear of the room, Gordon Blake shifts uncomfortably. He stands. Your Honor, I need to... Sit down, Mr. Blake. Judge Morrow does not look up. You are a material witness. You will remain seated until called. Blake sits. His face has drained of color. Eleanor turns back to the screen. This is not a family disagreement, Your Honor. This is a crime scene disguised as a will. She allows the silence to settle, then speaks again. The people call Marcus James Whitfield. Marcus rises from the seat beside me. He buttons his jacket, one deliberate button, and walks to the witness stand. His footsteps are quiet on the courtroom floor. He does not hurry. Richard glances at him, frowns, looks to his attorneys. One shrugs. Marcus is sworn in. He sits erect, hands folded, and waits. Eleanor steps forward. Mr. Whitfield, please state your relationship to the deceased. Margaret Ann Whitfield Harrow. Marcus looks directly into the gallery. His voice reaches every corner of the room. Margaret Harrow was my daughter. The courtroom does not erupt. It contracts, a sharp collective inhale, then absolute silence. Aunt Karen covers her mouth. Uncle Dale turns to the woman beside him.
The reporter's pen halts mid-word. Richard's head snaps toward Vivian. Your mother had a father. Vivian does not answer. Her face is ashen. Her lips move, but no sound emerges. Eleanor continues, calm and measured. Mr. Whitfield, can you explain the circumstances? Marcus speaks evenly. He recounts 1955, Ruth's death from pneumonia, the custody hearing, a 23-year-old man deemed unfit by a court that barely looked, a 3-year-old girl carried from his apartment while he stood helpless in the doorway. I searched for 15 years. I joined the FBI because I needed access to the systems that had failed me once. Margaret and I reconnected in 1992. We kept it private to protect her and to protect Elise. Eleanor inserts the USB drive. The courtroom screen changes to video. A familiar living room, Dorothy's house. Grandma Margaret sits in a chair, hands folded in her lap, facing the camera. Dorothy stands behind her. A notary sits to the left. Margaret speaks. Her voice is thin yet clear. I, Margaret Ann Whitfield Harrow, declare that any will produced by Gordon Blake after September of last year is fraudulent. I am of sound mind. My son-in-law, Richard Harrow, and my daughter, Vivian, have been systematically stealing from my trust for 2 years. I fear that if I confront them, I will be silenced. The video ends. The screen darkens. Vivian makes a sound, not a word, not quite a sob, something caught between. No one moves to comfort her. Richard pushes back from the table. This is a setup. That man is a stranger. He has no standing. Judge Morrow's gavel strikes once. Sit down, Mr. Harrow, or I will hold you in contempt. Richard sits. His hand places a hand on his arm. He shakes it off. Marcus looks at me from the witness stand. He does not smile. He does not need to. His eyes convey the only thing that matters. I am here. I lost my daughter once to the system, Marcus says, his voice quiet yet unyielding. I will not lose my granddaughter to the same family that stole my child's peace. The court reporter's fingers hesitate, then resume. The room holds its breath. Judge Morrow writes something. She does not look up, but I see her hand move, steady, purposeful, the prelude to a ruling. She calls a 15-minute recess. The gallery stirs. People rise, whisper, avoid Richard's gaze. I step into the hallway. Eleanor reviews notes. Marcus speaks quietly with the FBI liaison near the water fountain. Then I hear footsteps behind me, quick, determined. Elise. Celeste. She stands 3 feet away. Her eyes are red. Her hands are clenched at her sides. For the first time I can remember, she holds no phone. I want to testify. Eleanor looks up. I study Celeste's face, searching for the performance, the angle, the self-preservation. I find none. What I find is someone who has just watched the foundation crack beneath the only narrative she has ever told herself. I nod. Celeste Harrow takes the stand 10 minutes later. Richard's attorneys object immediately.
The witness is a beneficiary under the contested will. The witness testifies voluntarily against her own interest. Judge Morrow says, I'll allow it. Proceed. Celeste grips the edge of the witness box. She does not look at our parents. She looks at the judge. I knew the will had been changed. Her voice trembles, yet she continues. I didn't know precisely how, but I knew Grandma would never have left Elise a ruined house. She loved Elise more than any of us. A sound escapes the gallery, Aunt Karen pressing her hand more tightly over her mouth. Dad told me to stay silent. Mom said it was for the family. I believed them because it was easier than admitting I was part of something wrong. She swallows. Dad told me while Grandma was still alive. When she dies, everything comes to us, not to Elise. She's not built for it. I didn't argue. I didn't question. I accepted what was given because that's how I was raised. She finally turns, not toward Richard, not toward Vivian, toward me. I'm not asking you to forgive me, Elise. I'm telling the truth because Grandma deserved it, and because you are braver than I will ever be. The courtroom falls silent. Richard's face is a rigid, bloodless mask. Vivian's chin quivers. She reaches toward Celeste with her eyes, but Celeste has already looked away. Richard's lead attorney leans toward his colleague. Neither speaks. Judge Morrow makes a note. She looks to the defense table. Does the respondent wish to call any witnesses? Richard's attorney stands, hesitates, then sits again. No, Your Honor. The gavel falls. We will proceed to the ruling. I was the favorite. That is what Celeste said from the stand. I was the favorite. But in that family, being the favorite meant being the most useful accomplice. Those words linger in the air like dust after a wall collapses. Judge Morrow takes 11 minutes. She returns to the bench, adjusts her glasses, and reads from a prepared statement, without inflection, without pause, without mercy. This court finds as follows. 1. The document filed by Gordon Blake and presented as the last will and testament of Margaret Ann Whitfield Harrow is fraudulent. It is hereby declared void. Richard's attorney closes his eyes. 2. The handwritten will recovered from the Ridgefield property, dated March 14th, notarized and witnessed, is recognized as the sole valid testamentary document of the deceased. I feel Eleanor's hand press lightly against my forearm. Steady. 3. Richard Allen Harrow is remanded to federal custody on charges of forgery, bank fraud under 18 U.S.C. Section 1344, and elder financial abuse. Bail will be determined at arraignment. 2 U.S. Marshals step forward. Richard stands. His mouth opens. No sound emerges. 4. Vivian Marie Harrow is remanded on charges of conspiracy to commit fraud and filing a fraudulent mental competency petition. Bail hearing to follow. Vivian's hands fly to her chest. She turns toward me. Elise, how could you do this to your own parents? I do not turn. I keep my eyes on the judge. 5. Gordon Blake, Esquire, is charged with aiding and abetting the forgery of legal documents. His license to practice law is suspended effective immediately, pending formal disbarment proceedings. Blake sits motionless. The color has entirely left his face. 6. All assets held in the Margaret Harrow Family Trust are to be restored and distributed in accordance with the valid will. 7. Judge Harold Kern of Fairfield Probate Court is referred to the Judicial Review Council for investigation of misconduct. The gavel falls once more. Final. The marshals approach the defense table. Handcuffs click around Richard's wrists. The sound is small, metallic, precise. He looks at me for the first time since the hearing began. No anger remains in his face, only the hollow recognition of a man who has exhausted every move. Vivian continues speaking, to the marshal, to the heir, to anyone who might listen. No one does. Marcus places his hand on my shoulder. I reach up and cover it with mine. Neither of us speaks. Walking out of the courtroom, I think of something. My grandmother sat alone in her house, surrounded by people who were stealing from her. Instead of surrendering, she constructed an airtight case, sealed it behind a wall, and trusted me to uncover it. She could not fight them in life, so she ensured I could fight them after she was gone. I think of that as I stand on the courthouse steps, how she anticipated the system's resistance, how she prepared for every barrier they would raise, how she transformed a crumbling house into the one thing they could not bury. If you are listening to this and someone is making you doubt what you know to be true, that is not confusion, that is control, and you do not owe silence to people who profit from your silence. What would you have done? Tell me in the comments. Marcus stands beside me. The sun hangs low. The air is cold. He slips both hands into his pockets and looks at the sky. She would have hated the courtroom, but she would have loved the ending. I do not feel triumph. I feel the weight of a truth that should never have been hidden. Within 48 hours, the story is everywhere Fairfield County notices. The Register publishes a follow-up, this time not a press release. This time the headline reads, Richard Harrow family patriarch arrested for trust fraud, forged will voided by federal court. Richard's quote from the courthouse steps, "We're confident the truth will come out today," is reprinted in the third paragraph. It reads differently now. Vivian's Facebook page falls silent. The comments beneath her last post, the matching sweater Christmas photo, the one pleading for prayers and togetherness, have turned. "You lied to all of us. You should be ashamed." The account vanishes by Thursday. People who averted their eyes at the funeral now call with warmth they lacked before. I let the calls go to voicemail. I am not bitter. I simply lack the energy to manage their guilt. Dorothy calls first, and with Dorothy, I answer. She is crying, something she almost never does. "Margaret would be so proud, sweetheart, so proud." The sentencing details arrive through Eleanor over the following weeks. Richard accepts a plea deal, 8 years in federal custody. Vivian, 4 years. Gordon Blake, 3 years, plus permanent disbarment. Judge Kern resigns from the bench before the Judicial Review Council completes its inquiry. The Fairfield Country Club revokes his membership. A small detail, but one Grandma would have savored. Celeste calls once. She asks for nothing. "I'm moving out of Mom and Dad's. I'm selling the Weston house, the one that was supposed to be yours. The money goes back to you." I close my eyes. "Keep enough to start over, Celeste. That's what Grandma would want." A long silence. "I don't deserve forgiveness yet, but I want to deserve it someday." I do not tell her she is forgiven. That would be untrue, and she would know it. But I tell her the truth. "Then start. That is all anyone can do." She hangs up. I set the phone down and look around the Ridgefield house, half new, half old. Walls rise where walls came down. Frank's crew sands the new staircase railing. The house is becoming what it was always meant to be. So am I. Marcus invites me to his apartment in Stamford, a modest one-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a brick building near the harbor. Clean, quiet, unpretentious. When I step inside, I pause. The walls are covered in photographs, not framed but pinned, taped, layered one over another. Margaret as a toddler, black and white. Margaret at 18, laughing outside a diner. Margaret at 40, the year she found him, standing in a park with her eyes closed and sunlight on her face. And then me. My high school play. I was a tree in the background, half hidden behind a prop fence, but captured. My college graduation, the shot taken from across the street, through a crowd, slightly blurred, yet unmistakably me. The day I started at the nonprofit, carrying a box through the front door, smiling at someone off camera. He was there every time. "Margaret sent me the close-ups," Marcus says from the kitchen. He sets 2 mugs of coffee on the counter. I kept the long-distance ones to remind myself to be patient. I lift the park photograph. She looks peaceful. "She found you," I say, "and she never told anyone." She told Dorothy, and she told the walls of that house. He sits in the chair by the window. She didn't trust people with the truth. She trusted things, paper, metal, mortar. She knew things don't lie. We sit in silence for a while. It is an empty silence, the silence of 2 people who have searched for the same thing and finally realized they have found it. "I'm 71, Marcus says. "I don't know how many years remain, but whatever they are, they're yours." I set my mug down. "The Ridgefield house, when it's finished, come live there." He looks at me. His eyes fill, but his voice holds steady. "Margaret always said that house would be full again someday." I reach into my bag and place the small wooden box Dorothy gave me on the table between us. "She left you something too." He opens it. Beneath the 1974 photograph of M&M lies a second item I hadn't noticed before, a folded slip of paper. He unfolds it, reads it. His hand trembles. He does not share what it says. I do not ask. But when he looks up, something in his face has settled, like a door closing gently after decades left ajar. I have 28 letters I never mailed, one for every birthday I missed, They're yours now." He rises, opens the closet, and retrieves a shoebox. 28 envelopes, each dated, each sealed. I take the box and press it to my chest. Outside, the harbor catches the late light. Inside, the photographs hold the walls together. Vivian's letter arrives on a Tuesday, 3 weeks after sentencing. Handwritten, 3 pages. The envelope carries the scent of the perfume she has worn for 30 years, gardenias. I open it at the Ridgefield kitchen table, morning light streaming through the new windows. "Elise, I know you won't believe me, but I did what I did because I was afraid. Your father controlled everything, the money, the decisions, the lawyers. I had no choice. I went along because the alternative was worse. You don't know what it's like to live under someone like Richard for 30 years. She writes of her childhood, her own mother's silence, how compliance became survival, then habit, then identity. She writes that she loved Grandma Margaret, but could not bear what Margaret saw. She looked at me like she knew exactly who I was, and I couldn't stand it. The 3rd page is an apology. I'm sorry I used your therapy against you. I'm sorry I signed that petition. I'm sorry for the Christmas photo, the way I said your name at the courthouse. I'm sorry for everything I convinced myself was love, but wasn't. I read it twice. I set it down. There are parts I believe. Vivian was afraid of Richard. That is likely true. But Vivian also designed the emotional framework of every manipulation in this story. She chose whom to call. She chose what to post. She chose to weaponize my trust. Fear explains. It does not excuse. I write back. 1 page. "Mom, I read your letter. I believe you were scared, but fear does not justify what you did to Grandma or what you did to me. I am not angry anymore. I am simply done. I wish you well, but we will not have a relationship going forward. That boundary is permanent. I forgive myself for waiting this long to walk away. I don't owe you more than that." I seal the envelope. I address it to the federal facility in Danbury. I walk it to the mailbox at the end of Birch Hollow Road and drop it in. I do not wait for a reply. On the walk back, Frank is on the porch, installing the final section of the new cedar railing, hand-sanded, stained to match the original. He sees me and nods. "Looking good, boss." I smile. It is small and genuine, the first one in a long time that has cost me nothing. The trees along Birch Hollow are beginning to turn. Orange at the edges, gold beneath. The kind of beauty that arrives only after something has chosen to release. 6 months after the trial, the house at 14 Birch Hollow Road is complete. New white oak hardwood floors, the same species present in 1948. Fresh plaster walls, windows that open and close smoothly. A kitchen with a gas stove, ceramic backsplash, and a hook by the door where Grandma's old guest book now hangs. Blank pages, waiting. Frank's crew works the final day in near silence, the quiet of people who know they have built something that matters. Frank himself lays the last baseboard in the living room, the room where the false wall once stood. He runs his hand along the new surface, stands, dusts off his knees. 22 years in this business, this one I'll remember. I hang the photographs that afternoon. First, the original. Young Grandma Margaret holding a baby before this house when it was white and whole. I place it on the living room wall, precisely where the false wall used to be. Beside it, the 1974 photograph, M and M, Margaret and Marcus arm in arm before the world separated them. And then a new one, taken last week. Marcus and I on the finished porch, Dorothy behind us, hands on our shoulders, laughing at something Frank said off camera. Marcus moves in on a Saturday, 1 suitcase and a shoebox of letters. He takes the ground floor bedroom, the one with the window overlooking the garden Grandma planted decades ago. The rose bushes have been pruned and are already sending out new growth. His first morning, I find him on the porch, coffee in hand, seated in the chair I placed there, the exact spot where Grandma used to sit. He says nothing. He simply watches the yard. The quiet is comfortable, complete. That afternoon, Eleanor calls with the final figures. Richard, 8 years in federal custody, no parole eligibility for 5. Vivian, 4 years, eligible for supervised release after 2. Blake, 3 years, plus permanent disbarment. Kern, forced resignation, pension under review. The trust is fully restored. The Western house sale closes next month. Celeste kept enough to rent a studio in New Haven and enroll in a counseling program. The rest is returned. Total recovered approximately $1.82 million. I don't linger on the figure. Money was never the heart of it. The heart was the truth. And the truth sits on my porch right now, drinking coffee, watching rose bushes come back to life. Told you the house was worth saving, Frank says on his way out, toolbox swinging in his hand. Just needed someone who cared enough. I stand in the doorway and watch his truck disappear down Birch Hollow. Behind me, the house breathes warm, quiet, and full of light. 1 year later, I stand on a freshly poured sidewalk in front of a converted farmhouse on the adjacent lot to 14 Birch Hollow Road. Above the entrance hangs a simple wooden sign, Margaret Whitfield Community Center. The building was once a storage barn. Frank's crew gutted it, insulated it, brought it to life. 3 counseling rooms, a small legal aid office, a meeting hall lined with folding chairs, and a donated coffee machine that works about half the time. The purpose is straightforward: free legal support for people facing financial abuse from their own families, support groups for adults rebuilding after estrangement, mentoring for young women learning to navigate systems never designed for them. I didn't build this to prove a point. I built it because I know exactly what it feels like to hold the truth in your hands while no one is willing to hear it. The opening ceremony is modest, about 60 people, neighbors, former coworkers, a handful of clients from my old nonprofit. Frank and 2 of his crew stand near the back, arms crossed, eyes a little bright. Dorothy cuts the ribbon, her hands tremble. She laughs at herself. Margaret would have done it faster, she says, and the crowd laughs with her. Eleanor stands near the door, hands tucked in her coat pockets. She catches my eye and gives the nod that says, "This was worth it." Marcus stands beside me. He speaks not a word during the ceremony. He doesn't need to. When I step to the small podium, he rests one hand on the back of my chair, the quiet gesture of a father at a graduation. I keep my remarks brief. My grandmother hid the truth inside a wall because she had no safe place to speak it aloud. This center exists so no one else has to hide the truth again. It isn't about revenge. It's about giving the truth somewhere to stand. Afterward, I notice a small arrangement of white roses by the entrance. No card. I know who sent them. Celeste. I leave the flowers where they are. They belong at the threshold. Not quite inside, not yet, but present. Marcus lingers in front of the sign long after the others have gone in for coffee. He reaches up and traces the name Margaret Whitfield with his fingertips. He says nothing. Some things require no words. They simply need space to exist. That evening, after the last guest leaves and the coffee machine finally quits, I sit on the porch of 14 Birch Hollow Road. Marcus is beside me, 2 mugs of decaf. The sky edges toward amber and indigo. In the yard, the season's first fireflies test their glow. "She would have loved this," Marcus says. I reply, "She planned it. We just showed up." He chuckles, a quiet, weary sound. The sound of a man who waited 70 years to sit on this porch. I glance at my wrist. The silver bracelet catches the last daylight. Thin, tarnished, ordinary. If you didn't know the etching inside, Vivian called it costume jewelry. She wasn't entirely wrong. It wore a disguise. It cloaked a secret in plain sight for 4 decades. The bracelet held a code. The code opened a box. The box held the truth, and the truth held me steady when nothing else would. I used to believe family meant the people who shared your last name. the ones who sat at your Sunday table, who appeared at your funeral, and delivered eulogies full of empty words. I no longer believe that. Family is Marcus, who photographed my life from across the street for 28 years and never once demanded recognition. Family is Dorothy, who kept a wooden box in her closet for a year because a dying woman asked her to. Family is Frank, who deferred invoices because he believed in the house before I did. Family is Eleanor, who answered on the first ring and never set the phone down. Family is the people who choose you, even when choosing you costs them something. If any part of this story feels familiar, the dismissal, the gaslighting, the way your own family can make you feel like a stranger in your own life, I want you to hear this. You are not wrong for wanting better. You are not selfish for drawing a boundary, and you are not alone, even when it feels that way right now. The truth is heavy, but it holds you up. Grandma was right about that. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. If it meant something to you, I'd be grateful for a like and a subscribe. It helps more people discover stories like this one. And if you're not ready to stop, I've left another story in the description below. I think it will resonate the same way. I'll be waiting for you there. Remember, your truth matters.